Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to the Irv Homer Show. We bring the show to you Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 6 o'clock on the East Coast. And it is a program, well, let me tell you, Irv Homer, who I am. I am Irv Homer. I've been in talk radio for some 40 years. I've worked primarily for one radio station for 25 years, enjoying being in the top 10 in the Philadelphia market. 15 years on Channel 6, which is an ABC affiliate, on Sunday morning on a program called Inside Story, and have been guest appearances on various and sundry international and national television programs. I'm a consultant to some radio stations that do talk radio, some of the ones that are interested in improving their ratings, not the ones in Philadelphia that just go on and on and on thinking they're going to improve their, well, I'm kind of patting myself on the back a little bit. And with advice and common sense, I consider this to be common sense radio, CRS radio. And of course, with the issues that we discussed today, affect most of us down the line. But everything, ladies and gentlemen, that's happening today has been prophesied by myself and others. I would say Barry Farber, a conservative broadcaster in New York many years ago, the late Ed Harvey in Philadelphia. And we basically didn't have an agenda, whether we were Republicans or Democrats or conservatives or liberals. What we were concerned was with the issues. And I am basically concerned with issues on this program. And so without the restrictions of owners of radio stations that I work for, or program directors who have to justify their existence, and sales managers who must, go out and make sales, because without the bucks coming in, there's no radio or television program. This is, as my friend Lester Consolving said many, many years ago, I think he still uses it in Baltimore on the radio station that he does talk radio. It's uninhibited radio. I'm not inhibited by any of the restrictions that are on commercial radio, although I do have probably maybe next week a blockbuster report on what Irv Homer's future may be. I don't know whether I will accept the offer or not. I really don't like the idea of working again. I enjoy doing this a lot more, but if I decide, I'll let you all know next week. We do have a chat room, and that's available for your comments or questions. And if you have just questions before I even get into my diatribe, you're free to use the chat room, or you can use our telephone line. And that telephone number into the studio here is 215-253-8877. 215-253-8877. 215-253-8877. And this is, and I'm stealing it from my friend Lester Consolving, uninhibited radio. It's just that I don't know what the regulations are in this type of programming with obscenities or pornography, but we try to limit it as much as possible. But if you slip with a word like Utley, it's no big deal. We just prefer that you didn't do it because we may embarrass some of our listeners. The time right now on the East Coast is 4 minutes after 6, and like I said, you can use the chat room, ask questions about my brilliance, or go to the telephones and welcome our caller. If you will just give your first name, please.
And hello, Vince from Longhorn.
Lower your radio. Just a minute. Lower your computer or radio, please.
Is it better?
That's much better, sir.
Okay, thank you. I got a question. There's a guy a lady's giving birth, but the thing is, she had a sex change and she's a guy. Do you think that's normal in today's society?
Well, if you take a look at Vince and study, as I've done over the years, I had the first sex change person on the air going back many, many years ago, before Christine Jorgensen. And you must remember that God, if you believe in God, creates many strange things. I've met and interviewed and saw people that have both sexes. They both have a vagina and a penis. This is a creation of this God that people admire. I've seen men with penises with breasts, not through any augmentation, but a natural development. We're all born, believe it or not, with both sets of genes, both male and female. And the determination at the time of birth is which gene is more prevalent, the male gene or the female gene, and then that identifies what we are. So when you say what's normal, when God makes children with muscular dystrophy, or a child makes a Siamese twins, or Siamese twins normal, well, they're normal to God who created them. And if there's a man with a penis who becomes pregnant, that's God's normality. He created them. So I don't think that it's abnormal. I just think it's a creation of God, as He creates many people. He creates ugly people, good-looking people, black people, white people, Asian people, Indian people, brown people, yellow people, white people. So what is being white normal?
So how come we can't clone them yet, Irv?
I beg your pardon?
How come we can't clone people yet?
I think they can clone people. The problem is, Vince, is that you have a moral society, and you have a medical society, and you have a scientific society, and of course you have a financial society. And the fear is, as Hitler was trying to do, was to create the perfect race. And if it was possible at that time, and that experiment went on and on and on, and believe it or not, the experiments of the Hitler camps has never been revealed yet, the type of medical experiment that he performed in the concentration and the labor camps. I would say yes, if you can clone animals, you can clone human beings. The point is whether or not society is ready for a cloning of human beings. Now, they have cloned human beings, and they've reached a term. However, they were deformed. There was all type of abnormalities, and so they felt that it was inhumane, anti-God, and very costly. So they more or less terminated. But I guarantee you, in someplace somewhere, there are scientists working on cloning human beings, and it's going on whether we believe it or not.
Thank you. One more question. Is Hillary Clinton going to be the next Secretary of State?
I don't know who Obama. That was a leak that came out this week on the assumption that she may be Secretary of State. I think the fear of Hillary Clinton being part of the Obama administration is what can they do to keep Bill quiet? What influence would Bill Clinton have with his wife being Secretary of State? Since Bill Clinton is loved around the world, will that transfer to Hillary Clinton? So this is the decision that Barack Obama has in appointing her Secretary of State. I think she would make a hell of a Secretary of State. She did go to China when they had the conference on women when she was the president's wife. She was well received by 132 countries, and she has a diplomatic skill that is required when you are the First Lady or Secretary of State. I think it will depend on whether Madeleine Albright, who was former Secretary of State, who she's been in contact with, will confirm or deny whether or not she's going to accept it. I think it would be a good choice. But don't forget, Hillary called Barack Obama a lot of nasty things during the primary. And so it's a question of, how much can you mend the fences, and how much would you trust Hillary Clinton to be Secretary of State for 4 years, and then after the 4 years decide to run for president against Obama if he decides to run for a second term. So there are many questions there. I think it would be a good move for the United States. It would be a bad move for Obama, but I think it would be a good move for the United States.
God bless you. I'll talk to you Monday.
Thank you, Vince. Have a great weekend.
Yes, sir.
Our telephone number, once again, 215-253-8877. Your questions are certainly welcome on the telephone, or you can get on our chat room, and you know how to do that. It's Friday, November the 14th, 2008. My name is Irv Homer. Now, I do listen to talk radio throughout the day when I'm in the car. I don't when I'm at home. I'm busy watching a financial television channel, the voice of the Street Talk, and other. I happen to be a news money junkie, because in my years of experience, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're in a communist country, a socialist country, a capitalist country, money talks, and as Ozzie Myers, former congressman, said, bullshit walks. So money talks in communist countries. Money talks in China. Money talks in Russia. Money talks in the Arab dictatorship countries. Any dictatorships in Central and South America. Money talks. So I'm a money freak. I like to watch what money does, since money is now a commodity. And so I was listening to the idiot Michael Medved, who enjoys a certain amount of popularity, and he feels that he is the most brilliant guy on radio. And I hate to pick on these guys because people say, well, Irv, you're jealous. I'm not jealous. I don't know how much money Michael Medved has, but I would be willing to sit on a corner and throw $50 bills at him, and he'll throw $50 back at me, and the guy who runs out first wins the pot. And I made him that offer, but he hasn't taken me up on it yet. He had responded today to a guest that we had on the program, Philip J. Berg, the attorney, who claims that Barack Obama was not born in Guam, was not born in Hawaii. He was not born, but he was born in Kenya. And of course, Medved is calling the right wing, believe it or not, of the Republican Party crazies for pursuing this. And so I called his producer and I told him, your host there is wrong. Because the attorney in Philadelphia by the name of Philip J. Berg happens to be a Democrat. He happens to be an attorney. He is a former associate attorney general in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't think, and he's a lifelong member of the NAACP, and I don't think that he's a right-wing kook. Well, needless to say, you don't embarrass these guys on syndicated radio. And of course, the producer, well, we're not discussing that right now. And I said, I understand, but I know the type of program you do, and I know what a prostitute you and your boss are. And I hung up on them. So the latest press release, ladies and gentlemen, is from Philip Berg, the attorney who claims and filed cases in the court that Obama is not an American citizen. He was not a natural-born citizen in the United States. And so Mr. Berg's case, and we received this from a press release from Philip Berg, the Obama Times, which is his website. Mr. Berg's case, Berg versus Obama, was dismissed from the United States District Court for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania for lack of standing. Mr. Berg then filed a writ of certiorari for review of the case and an injunction to stay the election pending review. Justice Souter denied the injunction, but it is expected that the court will decide whether or not to review Berg versus Obama after the defendants filed their response, and Mr. Berg has replied to the defendants' response. Now, the defendants, namely Barack Obama, the DNC, has until December the 1st to respond. They are the defendants. And then Mr. Berg's reply will be submitted thereafter. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, we have Michael Medved, syndicated broadcaster, lying through his teeth and being respected by, I don't know how many listeners he has, giving out misinformation. Number one, he is not, Philip Berg is not a Republican. He's not a right-wing nut. He is a lifelong Democrat. He is a Democrat committeeman. So it is amazing how these people on syndicated radio get away with the lies they do. And when you call them to challenge them, to tell them the truth, you're just sloughed off as if you're some type of crazy. So we will keep you up to date after December the 1st on that particular issue. Let's go to our chat room. And the question is, Irv, were the Muslim nations successful yesterday at the UN in adding religious laws are above state law to the UN Charter? And that's Bob from Memphis. That will go before a special committee at the UN, Bob. If they agree that the Muslim nations, the religious law, the law of Sharia, which the Muslim nations adhere to, rather than the state law and the UN Charter, you will see a dissolution of the UN. The UN is based on a secular format, as America is. If you take a look at the United Nations registry, you will see that certain countries, many countries say we're a Muslim nation, we're a Christian nation, we're a Catholic nation, we're a Protestant nation. America has no religious identification in the United Nations. None whatsoever. It doesn't say we're a Christian nation. It doesn't say we're a Jewish nation. It doesn't say we're an atheist nation. It says we are neutral when it comes to religious identification in the UN. If this becomes law, if the UN accepts it, which I doubt they will, then two things can happen. Number one, the Muslim nations, if their fundamental Islamic politicians decide to pull out, will pull out of the UN. If it becomes successful, then countries will want a religious identification where religious law will supersede the state law. And this is a very dangerous precedent where religious law becomes the law of the country. In Muslim laws, and I've mentioned it many times, and I don't understand why people are not outraged over it, but in Saudi Arabia, which is one of our allies, we hear about allies, and our friends around the world. Well, Saudi Arabia is our ally. However, if anyone in Saudi Arabia converts to any other religion, Christianity, they can be killed by the laws under which Saudi Arabia lives, the laws of Sharia. If you marry outside, you can be killed. This is documented in their own literature. It is not my comments, it is their own literature that says so. The fact of the matter is that going back to 1998, when the Muslim nations made a declaration that there will be a war between the cross and the scabbard. And so there is a war going on between religions, unbeknownst. The fact of the matter is, just last week, the Pope calls for tolerance in meeting with Muslims. But what he said is, in Saudi Arabia, non-Muslims cannot worship in public, and Muslims who convert face death. The Pope also spoke out about the plight of Christians in Iraq, where churches have been attacked and many people have been forced to flee. So the Muslims don't like you Christians. But I can't understand, and it's always boggled my mind, ladies and gentlemen, why Christians who complain and cry that they're losing their God in America are willing to sit idly by and allow our government to be friends with a country like Saudi Arabia, who actually has killed Christians, who kills Christians today. There are no Jews there, so they can't kill them, but they do kill Christians. And the exodus from the Muslim nations of Christians to Israel and to other secular countries that will accept them regardless of what their faith is mind-boggling. There are about 1 million Christian refugees who've been driven out of their homes by the Islamic countries. And yet, if Israel commits one indiscretion against a Palestinian terrorist, they scream the Jews are persecuting the Palestinians. Yet you Christians, for some reason or other, and it boggles my mind, will tolerate the abuse and the murder and the killing of Christians around the world, but you'll scream bloody murder here in America because we have legalized abortion. So I guess you Christians die more graceful than Jews do. These are your Christian brothers being killed by Saudi Arabia, by the Islamic countries. Doesn't it mean anything to you? The Pope had a meeting of tolerance with the Muslims. Muslims didn't care, so he met with the Pope. And I think one of the Muslims made a statement similar that was made many years ago. I think it was the Pope Leo. He said, okay, now that you've got the encyclical, where's your army? Well, the Pope doesn't have an army. And so Christians around the world are being killed with abandon. And it just boggles my mind that Christians are so willing to die at the hands of Islamic terrorists. Now, I'm saying it here on this program. Tomorrow night I will go see Jackie Mason in the theater. In the Jewish Exponent this week, a letter to the editor said, from a Jew about Jackie Mason, that he is a bagel bigot because of his attitude toward Islam and toward Muslims. Well, maybe Jackie knows something that the Christians don't know. That the Islamic people, countries that have a majority of Islamic rule, are killing Christians. Now, it's amazing that Jackie Mason gets called a bagel bender. But why? Because he points out of what's happening to Christians around the world. That just absolutely boggles my mind. Question on a chat room. Irv, did you see Dennis Kucinich grill the Treasury about the $700 billion a day and how it will be spent? No, Bill, I didn't have a chance of watching television at all today, but I find Dennis Kucinich asking the right questions. I did see Lou Dobbs last night. And if by watching Lou Dobbs last night, I thought I was watching reruns of the Irv Homer show. To think that the Treasurer, the Federal Reserve Bank, is loaning out billions and billions of dollars with no transparency, that we don't know where that money is going and how it's going to be spent. This is unconscionable. This is fascism. This is the concept that Willy Schock, who I had mentioned before, the finance minister of Adolf Hitler, ripped off the money that was given to Germany to rebuild after World War I and spent it on armaments. No transparency whatsoever. And those countries that felt guilty about the defeat of Germany just kept quiet about it. If I loan you money for something and you specifically spelled out what it's for, I want to make sure that that is what the money is used for. When you borrow money for a mortgage for your home, you better use that mortgage money to buy that house or you'll go to jail. But when you have the Treasury Department and the Federal Reserve Bank, a private bank, obligating the American taxpayer for billions of dollars, I don't mean chump change, I mean billions of dollars, and we, the public, have no idea how it's going to be spent and how the American people tolerate it, I can't figure out what's happened to my great country. I, as a taxpaying citizen, want to know where the hell that money is going to be spent. You have a right to know where it's going to be spent. Now, Mayor Nutter and others, mayors of leading cities around the country, have gone to Washington to plead with President Bush. Either let us know where that money is going, or make sure that the cities who are in dire straits today because of the economy are facing millions of dollars of shortfall in their budgets. Can we get any of that money? Now, it's going to be interesting whether or not the mayor of Philadelphia or the mayor of Bensalem or the mayor of Doylestown will get an answer. And how the media, both the left, the right, the conservative, liberal, I don't understand politicians. One or two of them are causing an outrage, but how they're letting Congress to get away with this. That they are going to spend over $700 billion, $25 billion here, and we don't know where it's going to be spent. The CEOs that have managed to break and bankrupt some of the largest corporations and insurance companies in America, getting $85 million severance pay after they blew the whole industry? Are we crazy? Are the American? This cause, in my opinion, causes for people to be in the streets. To take that kind of abuse, it's crazy. If your wife would do that, you'd beat her over the head. If your husband took $500 and said he was going to go shopping or something, went to the casino, you'd divorce him. Yet we as Americans tolerate this abuse? Bill, you've opened up a can of worms here. I don't know if I were on if I was a syndicated broadcaster, like some of the bloviators there, I guarantee you that would be my cry every day on radio or television. Where is that money being spent? You don't know. I don't know. I don't know how much interest. What do you think the interest is, Bill, on that $700 billion that we're borrowing it? And who are we borrowing it from? Is this a long-term amortization debt that we're building? We'll be paying that thing off. There's no transparency to know where it's going, so I'm sure nobody knows what the interest on it's going to be. And what are they putting up for collateral and security? My house, your house, the highways, the railroad. Hell, they want to sell the turnpikes to Spain. They want to sell the Jersey Turnpike. They sold Rockefeller Center years ago to the Japanese. What are they doing? Buying up America piece by piece by piece by piece? It just boggles my mind, Bill. I have no answer. Maybe one of our viewers or one of our listeners has an answer to it. I see Lou Dobbs every night frustrated like mad. So they say that, well, Lou Dobbs is a racist because Lou Dobbs wants to know a couple of things that weren't addressed during the election, either by Barack Obama or John McCain. What do we do with 11 million illegal immigrants here in America, and how many more drug dealers and illegals are coming across our Mexican border? And why don't we send a bill to Mexico? If we take care of Mexican citizens in our hospitals and we're educating their children with American taxpayers' dollars, why don't we send Mexico a bill and say you owe us $500 billion for educating your people? No, we won't deport them, but we're not going to keep them either. So you pay us what you owe us. We'll take you're tired, you're hungry, you're forlorn, everything that's on the Statue of Liberty. Just pay us. This is utterly ridiculous. I get questioned every day on a daily basis. And when I go out to eat, and I eat out a lot, I just enjoy going out. Not that much. I mean, I don't eat heavy. Last night was a light dinner, and I'll go out tomorrow night for light dinner, probably Sunday afternoon for brunch. But it's late, and I meet a lot of folks. And one of the questions that boggles my mind is, and maybe some of you folks that are my age can remember, maybe some of you can, some of you folks who have studied history will understand what I'm going to say. And I can only relate to World War II, and they just had Veterans Day on the 11th, right? And they were marching with their hats and parades and so forth and so on. But the real issue is this. During World War II, America sold war bonds to the American citizens to finance World War II. We never borrowed any money during World War II from anybody and built up the finest war machine, Navy, Air Force, infantry, armored, ordnance, medical, without borrowing any money from anyone. Because we, the taxpayers in America, were buying war bonds issued by our government to be redeemed in 10 years, 20 years, or 30 years. And kids were buying saving stamps in school. And you got a little book and you filled it up with $5 and you filled it up again with $5, and when you got a $25 war bond, you bought the war bond from the bank and you put it away. I still have a $30 war bond from World War II that I saved when I was going to school prior to World War II. Why are we having someone else finance our war and we're in debt? Why can't we, our government and the Federal Reserve Bank, sell war bonds to the American taxpayer? I'm sure that many of you people would buy in invest in America. Buy a savings bond. Why was it necessary to buy and borrow money from all over the world? If this war was a just war and the cause was right, Vietnam, Korea, it's up to the administration, whether it be Democrat or Republican, to convince the American people that there was a threat to the country. The American people respond in kind. It's not necessary to give the casinos $3-4 billion a year in the state of Pennsylvania, or $6 and $7 billion a year in New Jersey. That money could have been going to finance this war in Iraq and Afghanistan, and we wouldn't have a debt imbalance with China. We wouldn't have a debt imbalance with India. We wouldn't have a debt imbalance with Central and South America or Germany or England. We'd finance our own war as he did when we won World War II. I can't figure it out for the life of me, ladies and gentlemen. Now, the old farts like me should have remembered the war bonds. And why young people in the Republican or Democrat Party in Congress didn't insist on the same thing, I don't know. Maybe somebody out there or someone on the internet, maybe somebody can explain to me why We can't finance our own wars through selling bonds. When you need a new bridge, they sell municipal bonds. You need a new highway, we sell highway bonds. Why couldn't we sell war bonds? And why didn't we? That is the question of the day for the bloviators on television and on radio, instead of trying to figure out whether Sarah Palin was a plus or minus to the Republican Party in the loss of John McCain. Is Sarah Palin more important than financing a war, you morons? Is that what you're trying to tell me? The fact that she wore borrowed dresses? This idiocy that's going on in this country today, led by the bloviators on radio and television, and led by the morons in Congress, are the cause of this demise of this country. We're still paying the debt of Korea. On top of that, we added the debt of Vietnam. On top of that, we're adding the debt of Afghanistan and Iraq. Did anyone ever find out whether or not the debt that it cost us in Vietnam and Korea has ever been paid off? And if so, what was the interest and who did we pay that money to? My mind is completely and totally boggled when it comes to the irresponsible finances of this country and the stupidity of the American people to tolerate it. Another thing that could have stopped the Halliburton investigations and private contractors, once again, we have 160,000 civilian contractors working in Afghanistan and Iraq. Their salaries are tax-free. And the truck driver that drives the truck from the Baghdad airport to Baghdad, the civilian driver, makes $30,000 a month, tax-free. While the sergeant, maybe your kid who's driving the truck in front of him, makes about $600 a month. That's outrageous. And why won't Congress investigate it? Because Halliburton and Brown and Root and the other private contractors in the Middle East poured tons of money into their political campaigns, and the politicians will not blow the whistle on the goose that laid the golden egg. And who does it end up costing? Us, the taxpayer. I read stories every day in the paper. One woman needed dialysis. She can't afford it, so she has to wait 2.5 months before she can get on that, if she can survive. That's in this great country, America, with the best health care? A man lost his legs in an accident, lost his home in Levittown, Pennsylvania. Offered a room by a woman out in the middle part of Pennsylvania. And one of the things that I find interesting more in my career is that people will say, well, it ain't never going to happen to me. I have interviewed more people over the years, ladies and gentlemen, that never thought cancer was going to hit them, never thought they were going to lose their job, never thought their child was going to die of leukemia, never thought it ain't going to happen to me. I ain't going to get in no automobile accident. I'm not going to get hurt. I'm not going to go broke. I'm not going to lose my house. What makes anyone viewing this program or in the United States or anyone in the world think they're immune to tragedy? None. And so the financing of these wars are a disgrace. And the entire Congress should be purged. Now, they used to have a law on the books in the state of Pennsylvania and other states throughout the country called malfeasance, misfeasance, and nonfeasance in office. And you could remove a politician if they were guilty of any one of the three or a combination of all three. And that means that when you're elected to office, you're elected to do a certain thing to protect the good graces of the people, the taxpayers, and your constituents. Well, they were throwing the bums out at a pretty good rate. Because once they got elected to office and started playing with the lobbyists and seeing all the power that goes with the job of being a politician, they went berserk. And they were being thrown out, not impeached, not criminal charges, just proved that non-performance of duty was enough to remove you from political office. When they changed the law that they've eliminated malfeasance, nonfeasance, and misfeasance in office, I screamed bloody murder on the air. I had politicians come to my boss and they threatened him to take the license away. Well, now, how do you get rid of a bad politician? How do you get rid of your state representative? How do you get rid of your congressman? How do you get rid of your senator? Unless they break some ethical rule of the institution that they're a part of, the Senate or the Congress. They took the power of the people away from us to get rid of bad politicians who don't represent us properly. But did Boobus America care about Irv Homer screaming and yelling about it? No. Well, now you got a bunch of nincompoops that bankrupted the country and you can't remove them. I hear these blowers. Barney Frank should be in jail for his friend Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, and Dowd should be done. But I mean, what kind of morons do they have behind the microphones in this country? What kind of morons listen to them and believe them without doing any research whatsoever? I had an uncle who was a clothing manufacturer. Manufactured civilian garments. And what I'm telling you is simple arithmetic, ladies and gentlemen. It's how we won the war and why we're losing this one. My Uncle Ed owned 2 clothing mills. He manufactured formal clothes and he manufactured men's slacks, sport coats, and suits. Very successful. Only sold top grade goods. And so when the war broke out, when World War II broke out, and I'm reviewing this because of Veterans Day, where I didn't have a chance to be on the air.
Phone call.
Well, that's, let me finish. Can you hold that for just 1 minute, sir? Thank you.
Sure.
And so my Uncle Ed was approached by the United States government and said, Mr. Prosen, we want you to manufacture Navy uniforms, Army uniforms, Marine Corps uniforms, and you will work under the excess war profit tax rules. We want you to make money on it. You show us the profit you made in manufacturing your civilian goods, and we will give you the same profit in manufacturing military garments. My Uncle Ed said, that's fine. Why didn't they do that with Halliburton or Brown Root or some of these civilian contractors in Afghanistan and Iraq? We don't want to put the Halliburtons out of business. We don't want to put Brown Root. We don't want to put Kellogg out of business. Kellogg is a construction company. But we don't want them to rape us at $30,000 a month for a truck driver. And when I bring that up, no. We deserve, this country, the people in this country deserve the financial distress they're going through right now. People such as myself, and I can list a whole group of friends of mine, that this economy is not affecting us one bit. We saw it coming. We saw the mismanagement of the hedge funds. We saw the mismanagement of derivatives. We saw the mismanagement of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. We saw the mismanagement of giving out prime rate mortgages. And we knew eventually this bubble had to break. And now that it's broke, they come to me to borrow money. It ain't going to happen. To our telephones, and good evening. Welcome to the Irv Homer Show.
Hi, Irv. This is Arlene. You're not the only one screaming. I'm screaming also, except you can't hear me because I don't have a radio program. But I am a long-time loyal listener. And you were talking about war bonds and savings stamps. We used to lend money in this country based on savings that the banks had, not just money that the Federal Reserve is printing up. So that's the reason for the credit problem, because people don't have savings in this country anymore. That's number one issue, which goes along with your war bonds issue also. Number two, when you talk about that bailout bill and our politicians, I have two people running for Congress, one the incumbent and one the opposite party. They were both for bailout, despite the fact that the calls are running 80 to 90 to 10 against them giving a bailout to those insurance and banks. Number three, I guess I'm up to. Both senators, both the Republican and the Democratic senator, despite their calls running 80 to 90 to 10 against giving the money for the bailout, voted for it also. I think we are toast, and I don't know what to do about it either.
Well, you can't do too much about it, even me on this program, or if I were on another radio station, but you give me 600 radio stations, as the Bloviators have, and I guarantee you in 1 week's time there would be transparency on that money, or that money wouldn't be there, or the people would take to the streets. The fact of the matter is, Arlene,
Yes, sir.
is that because of the fear that people will lose their job if General Motors doesn't get bailed out, or if IAG doesn't get bailed out, somebody get bailed out, they're willing to give away their soul under non-transparency $700 billion. I predict by February or March of next year, when that money runs out, there will be a depression that this country has never seen in its entire life.
I agree.
Because if you don't know where the money's going, you don't know what's going to happen to it. You can't talk to your friends, Arlene. They'll think you're nuts.
I know.
And
why I'm talking to you. That's why I'm talking to you. And the truth is like you said about the bloviators, if you even get a call in,
forget
they
it.
are dismissive, they blow you off, they talk over you. You're like the only civil person that I know on there. Well, I have a local radio talk show that is civil. But other than that, I mean, there's no way to get through to the national programs. They're just dismissive, and they're insulting.
Well, they're agenda-driven, and they're not issue-driven, and not concerned about the American people. They're concerned about feathering their own nest, and that's it, period. And I don't believe in boycotts, but I will not buy. I used to go to Chris Steakhouse in Broad Street in Philadelphia. I would not go to there. I deny myself a great steak at Chris's Steak, but as long as Hannity, they sponsor Sean Hannity, I refuse to go there. That is my claim to fame. But I am not going to pay for something to pay to hear somebody who is an idiot, as is Michael Medved, or even Michael Savage is a little nutty, but he sometimes has some sanity. And Limbaugh, I mean, these people are just totally comedians. They're there for comic relief. They add nothing to the agenda. They have no political power whatsoever, because if with all of their bloviating for the last 4 years, they couldn't get a Republican president to win this election, it shows that they have no political power whatsoever.
Right.
Well,
But go back to the point of when I have two senators that both voted for this bailout, when they had all their calls running against it.
Well, because the people,
the
80% of the people did not feather their political nest. Or you must remember, if they lose a job, where do they go to get a job when they get voted out of office? They go to the people who finance their election, and they get a job. Did you ever see any of these people lose? They get thrown out of office. They end up working for the insurance commissioner. They end up working for EPA. They end up working for somebody else. So they're not interested in you. I didn't put up, maybe I put up $100 or $200. I didn't put up $50,000, $60,000 to get the special. Oh, we don't give special favors. No. But as soon as they lose a job, guess where they go? They get a job at the airport. They get a job at SEPTA. They get a job someplace. So that's the reason that they'll vote against the will of the people.
So what's the solution?
Well, the solution is, I equate it with being on the Titanic, Arlene. It's a bad analogy, but I equate it with that. I know the boat's going down, but at least I know it hit a damn iceberg.
Right.
Thanks for calling. Stay well and keep fighting. Our telephone number, once again, 215-253-8877. 215-253-8877. On the excess war profit tax, I have no problem with big corporations making money. None whatsoever. However, I don't think that they should get exorbitant money for production to save this country. Now you hear, ladies and gentlemen, now see, my convoluted thinking will help many people because I have a stack of email here. Okay? I hold it up in evidence, and it's not fake papers. There's printing on all of them. There is one critical email in that. It is constructive criticism, but not nasty. And constructive criticism I always use. And what boggles my mind is this. The answers and the solutions are there. But it requires a little different type of program thought that you've been taught to think. Now let me ask you this. Right now, Chrysler, General Motors, and Ford want to be bailed out. They want part of the bailout money, right? Read the paper, Ford wants it, GM wants it, blah, blah, blah. I want to know how many war contracts General Motors got from the Defense Department for trucks, for cars, for the military. I want to know how many military contracts Chrysler got for their engines, for their aircraft engines. I want to know how much money Ford got in government contracts. And how much money did they make off government money that they should have taken those profits and made an automobile that gives us 50, 60 miles to a gallon? Don't you think that before the motor companies get any bailout whatsoever, they should be forced to reveal how much government contracts have you corporations gotten from the taxpayers since the Vietnam War? How many trucks did you sell? How many limousines did you sell? How many Humvees did you sell? How many tires did you sell? How many motors did you sell? And did you sell them at the same price that you sold them to the automobile dealer when I went to the dealer on Broad Street and bought my car? Or were you charging 10 times more for an engine for a military vehicle than I was getting in the automobile that I was driving? Nobody thinks of that except Irv Homer. Let's have a total disclosure of who's getting these billions of dollars to fight this war in Afghanistan and Iraq. Who made the billions of dollars in the Korean War? Who made money on the ammunition, on the weapon systems, on the guns, on the steel? During the Vietnam War, I have a story in my briefcase here that would blow your total and complete mind. Total and complete mind. The manufacture of the M16 rifle that was used primarily in Vietnam. And you guys that fought in Vietnam know what the M16 was. The weapon was a disaster when it first went on the market. It would clog up from the sand, the mud, the wind, the dirt. It was a great weapon if all the conditions were good. But if sand got in the barrel or in the firing pin, it would misfire. Wasn't worth a hoot in hell. And so they had to restructure the M16. Well, they couldn't make the M16 fast enough for the demand in Vietnam as the war grew. So the government went to them, who had the patent on that M16 rifle, and they said, look, we need that patent so that this other manufacturer can also manufacture the M16. Now, this was in the middle of the Vietnam War, while some of you people were dying. Some of your kids were dying in Vietnam. Remington versus Colt. I think Remington made the M16. Don't hold me to it, but I think I'm right. The government said to Colt, "Can you make the M16?" They said, "Yes, we can, but we don't have the schematics. We don't have the plan." The government went to Remington and said, "We want it." You know what Remington said to the United States government? While we had troops dying in Vietnam, they said, "Yes, you give us $40 million, we'll give you the plans on how Colt can make the M16 rifle." when I broke that story on the unconscionable, oh, well, Irv, businesses, we got men dying in the field using lousy guns. And what did that whore Rumsfeld say? Remember Donnie Rumsfeld? Remember that moron Laura Ingraham? Oh, Donnie. Well, Rumsfeld, where the hell did Donald Rumsfeld? Maybe we should make him Secretary of State. You go to war with the weapons you have. No, when you're attacked, you go to war with the weapons you have. But when you pre-plan a war, as we pre-planned Iraq and Afghanistan, you go in there with the right equipment to fight in a desert atmosphere. Do you know where we got the information to finally turn this thing around in Iraq and Afghanistan? But you're not going to hear about it because we may offend the Arabs. It was Israeli technology that was given to the United States Air Force to show how a jet engine can take off in a sandstorm so that the sand doesn't jam the jet engine. It was the Israeli infantry that showed them how to make weapons, RPGs, rocket launchers, to fire in a desert where the sand doesn't bother them. It was a stolen Russian MiG, a defector with a Russian MiG that showed American F-16s how to take off in mud because we couldn't take off on mud, but the MiG was capable of taking off in mud because it had an expanded landing gear on it. That all should have been done prior to getting involved in that war. But you had that whore Rumsfeld. Oh, you fight the war with the weapons you have. So how to educate the American people, I don't know. There are going to be a lot of people hurt in this. But of 300 million people, there's only 10 million unemployed. So what they're going to do is bail out the automobile companies with no transparency to make more Hummers that don't give you any gas mileage. And we're talking about, well, we've got to have alternative energy. Why do you think the price of gasoline is now $2.19 a gallon? That's what I paid. That's what I'll pay for tomorrow. $2.19 a gallon. Remember we were paying over $4 for a gallon? Do you know why they're doing it? You know why the oil companies are selling gasoline at that price? Don't read the sports. Well, read the sports page if you want to. And don't read the crap about Sarah Palin and listen to the crap that Sarah Palin caused the Republicans to lose. That's bullshit. The oil companies know that if they create an alternative energy source for our automobiles, our trucks, our airplanes, they're going to be out of business. They're going to be out of business. So the oil companies, in a conspiracy, are reducing the price of gasoline so cheap that all of the 10 companies that were working on alternative energy sources filed bankruptcy yesterday because the public is putting gas in their car at $2.19 a gallon. We don't need alternative energy. 10 of them went bankrupt. Look it up in the wall. Look up in the Business Journal, the National Business Journal. They'll name the companies that went bankrupt yesterday, forced out of business by the oil companies. And once the oil companies drive the alternative energy companies out of business, the price of gasoline will go back up again and stick it right up your exhaust pipe. For those of you that don't know how business works, Gennardi's is a very successful family-owned company. And Gennardi's originated in Norristown. A friend of mine became a manager of a Penn Fruit store who happened to be Italian. And the owners of Penn Fruit were Jewish. And they called Paul into the office and said, Paul, we want to establish a store in Norristown. And what we want to do is, we don't want to go head to head with Gennardi's because they'll kill us. They're established. But every store we open there, they'll kill us. And how did they kill Penn Fruit in Norristown? In the meat department, Gennardi's would find maybe steaks. They would sell steaks so cheap, they would lose money on the steaks. But it drove the Penn Fruit meat market out of business. They would sell produce and lose money on it and make it up another way to drive. Finally, Paul said, look, I'm not going to go head to head with Gennardi. I'm going to go over and meet with those folks. And so Paul went over and spoke to Gennardi. Look, I'm going to be here in Penn Fruit. If I run meat specials on Monday, you run them on Tuesday. I'll do produce on Wednesday, you'll do produce. They worked together. Penn Fruit established a successful store in Norristown. Gennardi's was successful in their way. They exchanged sales. But Gennardi was willing to lose money on leader items to drive them out of business, and they did it. And that's what the oil companies are doing today. So don't be so happy that gasoline is going to remain at $2.19 a gallon. When all of the alternative energy companies, T-Bone Pickens, who you've seen on television promoting wind power and promoting ethanol and promoting alternative energy, took a bath a couple of $2 billion this week. Because the oil companies are determined to drive any alternative energy company out of business. And once they have no competition again, the gas prices will go up. You know, the American people are strong capitalists. I hear these morons. One moron on Philadelphia radio is a strong capitalist. He doesn't believe in socialists. He don't believe in so. However, this whore that talks about 3 hours a night, sometimes 4, then works on Saturday, is so much of a capitalist. He teaches school at community college so he gets his benefits from the state. This capitalist whore. More people know about socialism than they do about capitalism. Capitalism is a cutthroat industry. When I work, you're out of business. Banks are the same way. You think banks are your friends? Banking, ladies and gentlemen, could be your friend. They'll loan you a mortgage, they'll loan you money to buy your car. But a bank is in business for one purpose, and that is to put you in debt so they can make money. I repeat, banks are in business for one purpose and one purpose only. They don't shovel your snow, they don't cut your grass, they don't wash your car. They're in business for one purpose, and that is to put you in debt. The credit card company is the same way. They're not in business to make you more comfortable so you don't have to carry cash. Their purpose is to put you in debt. The Federal Reserve Bank, which is a private bank in the United States, is in business for one purpose, and that is to put this country in debt. They don't make money on a balanced budget. They don't make any money if America does not have a national debt. The private Federal Reserve Bank does not make any money if there's not a deficit. The Federal Reserve Bank does not make any money if you have open markets or closed markets or high tariffs. The Federal Reserve Bank, owned by private citizens, only makes money when they can screw the taxpayer out of their hard-earned money. And until the American people know how capitalism works, they're going to be the victim of capitalism. Now, I'm not saying that socialism is any better or communism is any better, because you don't know anything about that, as the bloviators don't know anything about it. But if I'm sitting on money, money's no good to me unless I can loan it to you so you will pay me. So when you see the head of the Fed or your bank, you ever see the bank save money for a rainy day? Then the next day it says, buy that new car if you need it. You can then tell how much money they've got in reserve. When they got money, they tell you to save for a rainy day. Put the money in the bank. When they've got the money in there, they say, don't you think it's time to buy a new car? Don't you think it's time to fix your house up? When the American people learn how the game of capitalism is played, we won't run into this situation. You give me 300 radio stations, I guarantee you that within 3 months this country and the rest of the world will be out of debt. There are voices like mine in Germany, in England, in Spain, in Italy, in Russia where they're in prison, in China where they're in prison. The mafia, the organized criminal, the loan sharks, the money changers did not learn from the government how to screw you. The government learned from them. The government stole the mafia's idea. They call it franchising. The government learned the laws of usury from the mob and they stole it. The government learned how to screw the people in the hidden tax caused gambling casinos, and they stole it from the mob. Everything that the government does, not only our government, but around the world, who professes capitalism, and capitalism is all over the world, in China, in Korea, in North Korea, in Russia. Don't let these bloviators con you that there's socialism or communism. It's all capitalism. It's just different variations of capitalism. The same as in Christianity, there's 110 denominations of Christians. And when you say it's a Christian nation, I say, which one? Presbyterian, Catholic, Lutheran, Seventh-day Adventist, Church of Latter-day Saints? Which Christian am I? With my luck, I can't pick a number. I picked the wrong Christian. If I converted from Judaism to Christianity, I picked the wrong one. Well, capitalism is the same way. There's all forms of capitalism. The people in Russia under communism get paid a salary. The people in China who work under communism get paid a salary. How do you think they pay their bills? But the ignorance of the American people on how capitalism works is just mind-boggling to me. I'm Irv Homer. We're just about run out of time. It is Friday, and of course, the biggest thing, though, the big news story, ladies and gentlemen, in the Delaware Valley will be this Sunday at 1 o'clock when the Eagles play. That will really do it, folks. Till then, I'll see you later.